Well, thanks for inviting me this morning. No, I've got it. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Okay. So this morning, I hope to connect IoT to big data and machine learning, and then eventually to what the impacts are for businesses. So I want to do the loop that we were talking about earlier that the last speaker talked about, trying to connect the data to actions and to what it means for business. Now, I've been on a mission to try to dissolve technology into everyday objects. I worked on Lego Mindstorms and Guitar Hero. And as a way of introducing myself, I thought I would take you into my lab at MIT. I've been one of those people at Tim's Cambridge Innovation Center over 3 companies over the last 10 years, but I also teach at MIT. And show you my lab and show you my apartment in Boston, where my wife has to put up with all of these ideas that we hack in the lab. Enchanted objects are ordinary things that have the same functionality that they had before, except now they can talk. They're connected. These are ordinary things that have extraordinary capabilities.
When we're creating technology for the home, really we want to make something that's seamless and transparent, and that as opposed to having things sort of call out and draw your attention to it, make it a more ambient experience.
We'll just continue to behave with those everyday objects as we do in the world, and we can remain focused on connectivity between 2 people.
What we're seeing now is this proliferation of different devices that are, moving out from the cell phone and onto our bodies and into the world.
So in the middle of our living room is a coffee table that has Google Earth embedded in the coffee table. And I just found that having access to this amazing zoomable map completely changes how often we talk about travel and how often we talk about the world and how often we look up places that are mentioned. And it's nice to have this beautiful large reference object sitting in the middle of our living space. Our devices can be a lot simpler, and the interaction to them can be a lot simpler. The internet-connected umbrella can just be an umbrella that only shows whether it's going to rain. You don't need to tap on an icon or do anything that seems sort of artificial.
We come from a time in which we need to adapt to our homes and not the other way around. So what if our home could be a platform that we personalize and we customize? The key is, how do we create this ecosystem, these technologies that allow us to move from one experience to the other in the most seamless, most magical way.
Some people might think that a connected home is overwhelming, that there'll be so much information in the connected home that it's just a cacophonous environment and you wouldn't want to live there. But I think about how we decorate our homes today. We put photographs everywhere, we put paintings up, we put Post-it notes up. There's a lot of decoration and adornment in the home. And I think if enchanted objects can be designed in the right way, we're going to want hundreds of them around us.
I think what we're going to see is a new renaissance where designers as well as computer scientists are going to really make a really big impact in the type of technology that we see in the home.
The history of computers has mostly been about efficiency. I think one of the things that's changing is that enchanted objects can be about adding motion and add magic to the fabric of our everyday lives and experiences. So when I was working on this book, Enchanted Objects, I made a poster, almost like a periodic table of IoT. And I tried to organize it based on the wishes or the desires that they satisfy. So we all want to be omniscient. We want to be all-knowing. We want to connect with other people, telepathy. We want to keep our homes and our plants and our pot safe. We want to live a long life. We want to move effortlessly, and we want to be generative and to make things and to play instruments and paint. That's when the robots are doing everything else, that's what we want to be doing. But one of the things that I noticed, and where IoT jumps into being relevant to big data and to business, is that there's one sensor that is making its way more and more often into IoT. And that sensor is something we put on the inside of a trash can so it could automatically refill itself and your kitchen, which was we taped a camera onto the inside lid of the trash can so it would notice what you're throwing out and be able to reorder, almost like Amazon Alexa or Amazon Dash, except for your trash can. So it's supply chain management. And we also embedded a person who lives in the trash can who can help you make better decisions about your life. So if you're not choosing something that's locally sourced, like coconut water all the way from Asia, really? Or third box of cookies this week? Maybe not. Or maybe you could get a better deal off of something else. So Oscar gives you, nudges you in the direction that's better for yourself. But it's all given, this supply chain system is given by the fact that you have a camera that can see what you're throwing away. Now, a lot of us are taking pictures with our phones. There are 3.3 billion that are shared on social media every single day, which is just an overwhelming number to start to make sense of. But, and I think, obviously the phones have a lot to do, and the cameras should thank the phones for helping them survive and make their way into the world. But with this incredible growth of taking a picture intentionally, what's going to happen more and more is that photography and the sensor of the camera is going to start creeping out of the phones and into everything else, including trash cans. So these eyes are getting atomized. They're small, they're high res, and they're battery efficient. And photography, as a result, is moving from something that we think of today as intentional to incidental. Now, you know that we're pasting cameras in our offices, in our cities, in our homes. Our TVs are recognizing who's in front of them and our gestures. Cameras are inside the cribs that watch our babies, not just with the visible spectrum, but with the UV spectrum to sense whether they're getting sick. Billboards measure viewership based on cameras embedded. I don't know if anybody read The Hobbit, but Tolkien predicted that trees could see, and trees would be sentient. And the hunters in our society are taping cameras to the trees so that other trees can see and catch pictures like this of people chewing other trees in the middle of the night. I don't know if you saw in the video, but I was using a pen called the Enoto pen, which has a camera in its tip, and it captures not only the sound around you, the lecture, but also every gesture that you make. So it timestamps the lecture, but it's given by a camera in the tip of the pen. This is a project from the Media Lab where I've been teaching with Hiroshi Ishii, who you may know. And this is one of the more fun camera-embedded demos. It's a magic paintbrush where you can sample the world and apply that. So another startup out of the Media Lab called Tulip is embedding cameras in lighting so that the light can not only project lumens, but also pixels, and it can sense what's underneath the light, for example, for a manufacturing floor to provide directions over what the current task is in manufacturing. Another company out of Boston called MemoMe is embedding cameras in mirrors for high-end retail environments to recognize you and the outfit that you're wearing. And with a gesture, it can show you a recent outfit and see like which one does your ass look better. A lot of the work that's going on with drones, I think you can think of almost as another version of selfie sticks. And cameras, as you know, are making their way into drones in order to take better and flying pictures of us. Here's another startup out of Boston called Bounce Imaging. They're putting a mesh of cameras around a ball so that in a first responder situation, the police can throw the ball into an unknown area. It will bounce around and create a stitched panorama of exactly what's happening behind that door. So when they walk in, they know exactly what to expect. Pretty amazing. This is a startup in California called the June Oven. when I heard about this, I was just like, why doesn't my oven see too, right? So they're putting a camera on the inside of the oven to sense what you're cooking and so you don't burn your cookies. As you know, Samsung is getting into replenishing refrigerators through putting cameras inside. We're putting them in swallowables. We're putting them on our transportation vehicles. We're putting them on our first responders, our police, and our firefighters. And as I said this morning, I'm wearing one too, just to piss you off. If I look at the flip book of my day, 2 days, in fact, one in Cambridge and the other one in Copenhagen, where I also teach with a magician from London, you can start to see this is better than Fitbit, right? You can start to see there's a lot of data about how much am I moving around? Am I indoors or outdoors? Am I interacting with people versus screens? Are the people that I'm interacting with smiling at me or are they frowning at me? We compiled this smile score to try to anticipate depression based on how much other people are frowning at you. But you can see it's an amazing sensor, but it requires computer vision to start to be useful. So 4 years ago, I started a company called Ditto, which was just in the business of trying to read all these 3.3 billion photos every day that are shared on social media. And the things that we're reading are the things that brands care about. How is my product being used? In what context is my product being used? What are people mixing with Red Bull? Who's interested in a beach vacation? There's this huge signal of affinity and conversation and interest that happens not only in the text world, but also in the photo world. So for example, you can see who owns a truck and who's shopping for a truck and whose friends own trucks. Probably the best people to advertise to are the clusters of people where everybody else owns a truck and the last person doesn't. They're probably likely to tip the fastest. So GM cares. And as you know, for each of these classifiers, you use training data, which is samples of these objects. You then train a neural network to recognize similar things that are truck-ish, and each of those produces a PR curve, which is a measure of precision versus recall. And recall is, did I find it? And precision is, of the things that I found, how often was I right? What percent of the time we're right? Being in the top right corner is perfect. No one's perfect, especially with finding things in images. So, for example, our truck classifier, if we find 80% of them, we're right about 90% of the time. You can sort of dial that. Now, why do brands care about looking at all these photos? There are really three primary uses of mining social media that we found so far. I'm sure you can come up with more. One is to ask the question, if I were to do a focus group for Procter & Gamble for their Frenchie's crap mustard brand, is that being captured in translation? What would I see? Like, how are people using the product? Well, these people are putting not only on their turkey rolls, but also on broccoli are putting mustard, which gives you insight about product usage. You can also do what Nielsen has been doing forever, which is you can measure how often does my product or brand appear in the world? How am I doing week over week with all of my social media marketing campaigns? So you can compare McDonald's to Wendy's, and you can see that they're doing much better that week. We actually put up a website which you can go to called Visual Brand Power. So if you they had Ben & Jerry's on my flight yesterday from Boston, and the market share for Ben & Jerry's is 20%. They get 20% of the revenue in ice cream, but their photos represent 60% of all the photos on social media for ice cream. So they're doing a great job. Their visual brand power, if you divide the two, is quite a bit higher than Breyers, who should be doing better. Now the third use, so the first use is learning is insights. The second use is measurement. The third use is really about the people. It's not the posts, it's the posters, the people that are posting. So, for example, for Manchester United, they can find that their fans are located not only in the UK, but also in much of the Pacific Rim, so they can learn about what's going on. So I have a short video about Campbell's and how they're using this photo-based data, and then I want to talk about what it will mean in the future for how we discover products and how we shop.
Campbell's is a global food company, and I think not long ago we would have been seen as a very traditional marketer, and now we're adopting new and emerging technologies to really connect better with our consumers. We started with V8. We know a lot of people talk about V8, we know a lot of people share content on V8, but it's not very easy to identify when they're talking about a V8 engine versus a V8 beverage. And I think what Ditto helps us do is unlock some of those mentions of our brand and put some of that into context that we wouldn't have access to before. We all understand how important it is to try and collect feedback from our consumers and really listen to what they're saying. And social provides us a really interesting avenue in that it's all unprompted, it's authentic, and so it gives us a chance to really understand what people are really talking about, even when they don't email us directly or pick up the phone and call us. So I would imagine that more and more brands will start to adopt the technology to try and help round out their understanding what the consumer is talking about.
All right, well, enough about Ditto. What I want to talk about is what I think is the ramification of this for business and for e-commerce. And you, sir, asked earlier, you asked Tim, talk about failures. We really learn from failures most. I totally agree with you. And I would say this vision of social commerce that I want to paint for you next is something I consider a failure. Because this vision is a relatively old vision. It's a 4-year-old vision. It's why we started the company. It's the reason we called it Ditto, was this idea that if you saw your friend wearing some trendy hoodie, especially if it's somebody that you respect, it's a peer, then you might click on the hoodie and shop for similar things. But interestingly, we haven't adopted this yet. I don't know why we're being so slow about this. We're sort of seeing signs of it with Pinterest buy pins and Twitter buy buttons. There's experimentations going on, but it hasn't really flourished yet. And maybe, this is such a visual society. Maybe it will happen here in Japan first. I don't know. I want to talk to one of you who wants to help make this vision a reality. But I'm excited about this notion that if the web was about making words clickable, then the big opportunity is now making aspects of images clickable, putting actions onto various parts of an image. So there's a technique called an embedding, which we use in order to help connect products that are in photos to products in catalogs. So it's a visual clustering. So if you take a bunch of products that a retailer might sell, in this case a home goods retailer, you can cluster them based on how visually similar they are. So once you train on that lamp and that Eames chair, and you embed it in a similarity space, then you can find them again in user-generated photos. You can say, that's the Eames chair, there and there and there and there. That's the lamp, there and there and there and there. So, and you can start to do that in a way that is on a pixel by pixel basis. So rather than being able to do this, just there is an Eames chair somewhere, these are the pixels that are occupied by the Eames chair. So that's what gets, to me, that's what gets me excited about how big data enters the world of photos. And what that means is that the action can be embedded right in the photo. So you can say, learn more about that thing over there in the photo. Go to that place that's represented in the photo. Call that guy. Get a game highlight of that. Connect with that person. Donate to that cause. Shop for that thing. So here's some examples of how it plays out. You're shopping for a pair of glasses. You say, you don't have to go to the Warby Parker site. You just shop off of your friends' faces. You're interested in going to an event. You see your friend post a photo, and you say, when's the next game for that team? And I want to sit right where he did. You're interested in stand-up paddleboarding, and you want to get a used one on eBay. Your friend posts a photo of a great beach vacation, and you say, how much does it cost to get there? How many people post foodie photos? Anybody? Yes, I do too. You're inspired by your friends' foodie photos, and you say, how much would it, I want to reserve that table, or I want to eat a similar meal. For me, Japan is like food heaven, by the way. This impacts hospitality, how we discover places we'd like to stay, like from Hotel Tonight or Airbnb. You should be able to listen to people's t-shirts if they have band emblems on them. You should be able to get previews of movies through posters. You should be able to shop for crazy pants. You should be able to engage in sharing economy when you see a car you want to borrow. We're seeing this happening already in this website called House. Has anybody seen House? I don't know if it's here. They have a manual way for people to tag like that outdoor wall-mounted lamp. But it's all manual. It's not using computer vision. It's just getting people to do that. Our vision is that it's not only the designer photos, it's everybody's photos that participate. So here, let me just show you one thing. We just built a little app to make photos clickable, but also to use this economics idea called social proof, which is if you've seen your friend do something and you have a similar interest, sort of gives you the permission to do the same thing. So it takes your Instagram feed and your friend's Instagram feeds, pairs visually similar photos, and then allows you to say, I'd like to go back to Paris because Bijan did as well. So it's sort of a way of creating diptychs. So conclusion, how did we get to this crazy world of perhaps, I think, the biggest change in how we discover and buy products again? Well, these are the steps that got us there. First, cameras jumped into phones. Next, social network took all of our attention not onto the text that people write, but on the photos that people post. Even the textiest of streams, like Twitter, has become dominated with photos. It's almost photo sharing in Twitter. The next, NTT and others gave us permission to share as many photos a day as we want, because we don't care about the cost of data anymore. And next, the most important disruption is that computer vision and deep learning and big data and large training sets are giving us structured user-generated content. Not just user-generated content, but user-generated content with actions on top. And Elasticsearch and others are giving us big clouds that structure the data and give us the affordability to be able to parse billions of photos a day and not worry about cloud costs. And I think the last thing that's happening is, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that the way we think about photography is going from something that you intentionally do to something that you unintentionally do, that you do incidentally, ambiently, like this camera that I'm wearing today. And that gives us this notion of surrogate experiences. I want to see what somebody else, a celebrity, is doing, or Carl. Well, I guess Carl is a celebrity, but so you could sort of experience his day. And the last piece of the puzzle is already in place. How many people are sort of familiar with affiliate fee models? This is the idea that if you recommend something on Amazon and somebody else buys that thing through your recommendation, you get a God-given 5% of the transaction costs. Every e-commerce site is doing this, from Airbnb to Expedia to OpenTable. All of those affiliate models are already in place to make this world of social commerce happen. So my prediction, and I think the big opportunity for IoT cameras and then how it affects business is to think of these streams, these massive streams of photos, as actionable, as shoppable, and that's what I'm working on. So I'm working on the ability to discover something in photos, the ability to train a cloud to see anything in a photo. I will be here tomorrow, and I'm sticking around, and I'm eager to engage with you. But I'll take a couple of questions now if there's time. Thank you.
So you finished 5 minutes early, so maybe we can take a couple more questions. 誰か質問されたい方、日本語でも英語でもどちらでも結構です。
Come on, I'm used to teaching. What do you think? What's the reason that this hasn't happened yet, do you think? Yes.
Hi, David. A question I'm sure you heard many times, but what about privacy issues around all these? You mentioned earlier you're pissing people off taking a picture every 10 seconds.
Yeah, my wife doesn't let me wear this camera in our house, and I usually forget to take it off when anyway. Well, today Ditto just looks at public photos. So that's one answer to the question, which is there's a big bright line between public photos and private photos, and we don't have the right nor the ability to do anything with private photos. Now, I think where it crosses an interesting line is Facebook just last week announced that you can search your private Facebook photos based on these deep learning classifiers. Like you can search for pizza in all of your photos and your friends' photos. So they're running these classifiers on all of your data, and I would be really surprised if they're not using that as an affinity map of you, right? They're probably learning, there's probably something to learn out of the last 20 years of your photos, right? Like how you vacation or how your friends vacation. So there's a lot to be learned out of photos, and I think it's not clear that what Snapchat is doing, even though they're considered private peer-to-peer, they are probably mining your photos as well as what Google Photos is doing. So, I mean, I think there are issues around public photos, certainly in cities, about who has rights to that data, for how long is it preserved, is it subpoenaable? Yeah, it's fraught with problems. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't use the data. In some ways, that's good for business.
Okay.
I was meeting with just a way that could be used for good. I was meeting with a group. The mayor in Boston has a group called the Center for Urban Mechanics that look at city data and how to make Boston better. And they're using some of the city cameras around Boston to predict places that we need bike lanes because people will be doored. Do you know the verb to door? It's when someone opens the car door and the biker goes flying. So if they see a lot of bikers and a lot of people parking and close proximity, they can just predict a dooring rate, which seems like a good way to start to build protected bike lanes around Boston. So that's a pro-social use of the data. Do you have a question?
Maybe there's time for one more question.
Yes, here.
Just one second.
Thank you for your talk. Regarding IoT, you picked up vision, but human being has other sensors like touching and smelling. So I wondered if you're interested in other sensors like sound or other taste or something for class for you.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested in all of the senses, and both as on the input side and also on the output side. I mean, there's work going on at the Media Lab around wearables. Like one project that I talk about in my book is a Facebook jacket that gives you a hug when someone else gives you a like. So, so it has little pneumatic pumps in it, so you sort of look like the Michelin Man. You sort of swell up a little bit when other people like you. There's a necklace that one student is building right now that tries to either emit a lavender smell or a mint smell to try to regulate your excitation level. So if you're falling asleep at the wheel or in a class, it will give you more minty smells. And if you're really, really stressed out, it'll give you more lavender, sort of calming smells. So it's a way of sort of it's a regulation, and it's audio only. I mean, it's smell only. So absolutely, like I think there's a ton of potential for many new interfaces that come in contact with the body in lots of ways. Just this morning I wanted to talk about computer vision and deep learning. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for the intriguing talk.